It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulson and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It's the Take Command podcast. Logan Paulson, Craig Hoffman with you, sitting in our respective chairs before we ascend to the hill and watch practice again today. Mini camp starts a little bit later. Logan, it was pretty funny. You got some feedback. People being like, hey, I'm so glad you specified what the hill was that you were talking about, because Logan kept talking about, oh, we're up on the hill watching practice, and people thought like we were literally on Capitol Hill or something.
No, just on a little hill, just a little slope at the practice facility.
Did you ever have to run that hill?
No, they've been running it a lot recently, kind of for conditioning and stuff, but I don't remember ever running that hill one time when I was there. So obviously that's a new addition to the strength conditioning protocol.
Yeah, so thankfully we just get to stand at the top of it. There's one tree that provides a little bit of shade. Shout out to that tree. We will review practice on Thursday. I'll be there today. I won't be able to make it tomorrow, but Logan will obviously be there both days. But we'll have a full practice review on Thursday's show. Today, as we record this, it is Tuesday. If you are hearing this on Tuesday, my show will be live from Ashburn later today on the radio. So we're going to see who can swing by, stop by, and talk about things from both the media side, maybe pull one of the Post reporters in or something like that, and then trying to get some interviews and things like that after practice today. So look forward to that. Or if you're listening to this on Wednesday, all that happened, and it's on my podcast at The Hoffman Show. Just search that. Okay, let's get into our mailbag, though, Logan, as we get started. And this is, we have a couple, questions today that were more combos of questions. We got these in multiple forms. Someone asking about this player, someone asking about this player. So to everyone that asked about tight ends, we're starting with you. And first, we got some stuff about Ben Sinnott, and then we had someone who also emailed in, Logan, and was like, "I'm so glad you mentioned Cole Turner. I can't imagine that they, hearing what you guys were saying about Turner, how he's continued to build up his body, how they've kept him, on the practice squad, that Sinnott would just get the job over Cole Turner." So, what have you seen from those guys so far this offseason, and how would we, handicap basically the race for backing up Zach Ertz and the different roles that have to get filled behind 86 as we go into minicamp today?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really interesting battle to watch as we move forward, because I do think you have probably 5 guys, because I'm trying to think. It's Colson Yankoff, Cole Turner, Ben Sinnott, Tyree Jackson, and then Cager, right, are the 5 guys that are kind of the rest of the room. And talk about an interesting group of guys there in terms of pass catchers. I think the one thing that fans kind of maybe sleep on is it's pretty easy relatively. This is, relative to something else, but like it's relative to finding a pass catching F in today's NFL is a little bit easier. So I think that one of the interesting things to kind of keep an eye on is who is kind of in that backup Y role. So the person backing up Bates, and if that person has any pass game upside, and then in a game situation, if we are carrying 3, they can back up John, and they could also potentially back up Ertz. So I think that does kind of change the parameters a little bit of like what you're looking for in terms of game day player. They also got to play teams. So, obviously if you're looking for teams value, it's Colson Yankoff. And I will say Colson Yankoff to me is really interesting because he's got this nice athletic movement profile. He's very competitive. He's obviously very tough. Like, you can't play teams without being very tough. But I think the thing is like, can he ever become a serviceable inline blocking tight end? Like, he was a converted receiver. They put him at running back. This is like his first year kind of playing full-time tight end, or second year. So how does that developmental arc look, right? And then you kind of go through all the guys, and they all have little issues and little warts associated with them. Like Cole Turner, I think, looks great. The thing that I want to see, and the thing he improved on last year in talking with some people on the staff and just watching the film, is in the preseason, I thought he got much better in line as a Y. And so if he can kind of be a guy that has shown that blocking ability, right, shown that blocking prowess, but also can back up Zach potentially, I think that'll be really interesting to kind of keep an eye on. And then you kind of juxtapose that with Ben Sinnott. And Ben Sinnott is a guy that, when you go back and watch, we were talking about this before we got on, when you go back and watch, there's no physical issue with his play. Like, he's fast, he's strong, he's explosive. Like, he can't run every single route that Zach runs, but not everybody can. But in terms of like linear route tree, so post, seam, corner, speed out, speed in, like he's doing all right with that stuff. In line, he's very physical. As a fullback, he's very physical. I think the thing that pops up with him is just when you're watching back the plays, you're like, this doesn't look like it's right. Like what he's doing looks like maybe the wrong execution of the play. And I don't know the plays, but there is a question in my mind when I'm watching the film of like, is that where your hat's supposed to be? Is that where the run's targeted? Is that the adjustment you're supposed to make to this front? Because I played a lot of football and I've coached football now, and like the stuff he's doing doesn't seem to make sense. So the fact that you didn't see an increase in play time over the course of the season would lead me to think that his issues kind of reside in that department more. Now, I don't know that for sure because I haven't talked to anybody in the building, but I think that's something that really jumps out to me with him. Like physically, everything you want is there. It's like, can he get some of that mental side stuff cleaned up? And again, that's why, like, when you look at the back half of that room in terms of names, you got a lot of questions about guys. There's a lot of exciting opportunity, Greg, but there's also some uncertainty about what guys can do and what they're looking for in those. If they keep 4 2 spots, if they keep 3 1 spot.
Yeah, the Turner one's interesting because he definitely looks more tight endy than he has. He's always looked like
a big wide receiver.
Yeah, a big wide receiver. And the problem was he had drop issues. Like he would get, especially in games, in preseason games, get a bunch of opportunities and drop balls. And you're like, well, man, if your whole thing is I'm a wide receiver level tight end as a pass catcher, and you don't actually catch the football, well, that makes it really hard for me to trust you. I'm not going to put you out there to run routes and catch footballs and be a target if you're not actually going to catch the ball. And so I get excitement about Cole Turner because the potential is obviously very high. He still has good movement skills. He's still big as hell. He's actually bigger now. So the stuff that, where last year, you even watch him hit the sled and you're like, oh man, we got some leverage issues here. Can we get that very large frame down and be the low man to win here against a sled, nevertheless another human being? I think he has definitely gotten better at some of that stuff, and you see him seemingly more on balance and just like more tight end looking this year, which is great. I'm telling myself, maybe this is mean to Cole Turner, but I am not going to get excited about Cole Turner until I see him in preseason games performing well, because that level of pressure is the one where he has, for lack of a better word, folded in the past. And so if you can pass that test, like I've seen you look good in training camp, I've seen you look good in practice. Can I see you look good in a true game situation with football pads on where there's someone wearing a different colored jersey trying to hit you? And if he passes that test, I think we can get excited about Cole Turner. I think that maybe the long play of investing in a guy's development that has pretty rare physical attributes could pay off. Until that point, I'm just going to be like, I'll keep an eye on it and not get any more excited than that when it comes to Turner.
Yeah, and I think, I was thinking about last year with Cole Turner. It was tough because I really thought he had a shot to make the team. I think he had a couple of drops in the last preseason game that I wouldn't even put on him to a certain extent. You know what I mean? Like one was a stick, like a 5-yard out where he sat down and the quarterback threw it wide and he got his hand on it late, but it's like they weren't on the same page. That kind of stuff happens in the preseason game. But I agree. I think you just need to see a little bit more consistency. And I think that was the fun thing about last year with him is you were starting to see that specifically in the run game. Like I know there was a lot of people that myself included that thought he would never be able to kind of be serviceable in that area. But here now watching him, it does seem like he is serviceable, or based on the preseason game last year. Now in the preseason, you're playing guys that are going to be, accountants in a couple of weeks sometimes, but that's, at least you got to show you have the ability to do it. The leverages was better. The hand placement was better. So that was really exciting for me to see. Right. So that's, I think he's a really interesting one to keep an eye on, but I agree with you. It's like, he's got to prove it. It's the same thing like with Colson. Like Colson can play obviously great on, he was a maniac on teams, but can he do it in the game on offense? And then that's going to change his role. And obviously when we're having this conversation now in OTAs, minicamp starting tomorrow, but minicamp season, so much changes. But if you can kind of start laying that foundation now as a player, I think that really helps you out moving forward into training camp.
Yeah, I would say the last 2 questions I have last 3 questions quickly. Did you Cager and Jackson are interesting, and I'm sure you could talk about them for days because this is, tight end is your position, and you're very intrigued by both these guys. But realistically, do you think they have enough to pass these other guys, knowing that they kept 4 last year and those 4 are still here, or are they just intriguing guys to watch in camp and that's probably going to be the end of it for them.
I mean, for me, Jackson is probably the most interesting guy in the room, honestly, because of the physical profile. And I've talked about this with you, maybe on air, maybe off air. I don't remember the exact kind of amalgamation of our conversations, but like, he's just big. He's huge. He's 6'7", probably. He looks like he's 265-ish. He's got long arms. He's got kind of this basketball build. He tracks the football well. And when you have him, like, again, like when you see him run, like, it's real deal running. It's not like I'm a big guy that's kind of loping and plodding along. It's like, I have suddenness, I have acceleration, I have kind of some basketball-esque movement skill to my background. And I, like, when he hits the pad, like, it snaps. Now, does he always do the right thing in the run game? I haven't watched him closely enough to do that, but he's a guy that I've literally followed since he was in Philadelphia, because I've always thought he was a really interesting signing, right? Because he's got this kind of quarterback. He's a developmental guy. He's always been close to sticking on. He was in New York for a little bit a couple years ago, Buffalo. He's always been close to kind of making it, but it never worked out for him. And here, like, maybe this is the year he figures it out and kind of finds his way to a roster. And I'm not saying he will or he won't, but the athleticism, the strength, the body type is something that there's not that many people that look like that and move like that. And so I do think, in terms of a guy that could back up both Zach and John, like, from a size standpoint, definitely John. From a route movement standpoint, like, there's a lot of Zach to his game, which makes sense because they played together in Philly, right? So he's had a lot of mentorship by Zach. So that's the one to me that is, like, if we're putting, like, dark horse candidate to make the roster, I feel pretty good about him. Now, he's got to show a lot, kind of in the same way that, maybe we're talking about with Cole, like a consistency, right? A consistency in the run game, a consistency in the pass game. In the 2 OTA practices we've seen, like, the way I think he looks, of the guys that we're talking about, he seems to be the best mover of the group in the second level route kind of stuff. But again, we talked about how important it is that third guy be able to do a little bit of both, right?
Right.
Back up John, back up Zach. And can he do the John thing as a converted quarterback? I'm not sure, but he's the guy that gets me really excited. And Cager obviously is a guy that I loved when he was up in New York, just because he fit kind of this F mold. And he was a guy, I don't know if he was undrafted, but a big converted wide receiver that's put on weight. And I like guys like that. I like guys where you kind of find somebody from a different position and say, hey, let's see how it works at tight end. But in terms of guys that I'm dark horse candidate to make the roster is definitely Jackson for me.
And then I'll just keep it to this to keep us on time. I'll eliminate one of my other questions. For Yankoff, are we overthinking it in terms of his roster spot? Like, in that, did he play well enough on special teams that, like, he, Tyler Owens, and Jeremy Reeves and Nick Bellore are, like, considered the 4 core special teams guys, and they're going to make it. And it's just a matter for Colson of how much do you play on offense based off what you develop. But is his spot, like, when we do our 53, should we just go ahead and put him in Penn as long as he's healthy because he played that well on special teams? Or is there a gap between, say, him, Bellore, Reeves, and even Owens, who's the fellow UDFA next year?
I personally think it's close. I don't think he's quite as instinctive as those other guys. Those other guys are really, like, Revo and Bellore specifically. He kind of falls in the Tyler Owens bucket for me, like, just a big physical guy that can run and is kind of fearless making tackles. I think the thing with him in terms of roster spot that gives me a little bit of pause is, like, does Dominique Hampton figure the special teams thing out? Does Jordan McGee figure the special teams thing out? Does Kane Medrano figure the special teams thing out? Like, because now all of a sudden we've talked about that linebacker room, and what if they decide to keep 5 and one of those guys is a teams guy, or one of those guys like Medrano or Hampton or whoever, one of those 3 guys is the big nickel, right? And all of a sudden now he's playing 10 to 15 snaps on defense, maybe less, let's say 7 to 15, just to give us an appropriate range there. But the rest is on teams. Like, that's going to affect Yankoff's ability on teams or his viability on teams, right? Because now we've got another body that has a role in the defense that's playing a significant role in that group. So that's where I'd say is, yes, he's an excellent special teams player. No, I don't think it's in Penn yet because we got to see how some of these other guys develop, and some of the secondary guys too. Some of, like, the backup safety types and things like that. Like, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And the other one that's interesting too is, like, Tyler Owens as an example.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, why does that affect Yankoff? Let's say Tyler Owens becomes your third safety, right? And he's not playing on teams as much. And now all of a sudden you have to keep someone for Tyler Owens, someone in another kind of special teams capacity, and that changes the dynamic as well. So lot still yet to be determined with that kind of special teams, kind of your special teams guys there. But I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. And I'm excited to watch it at minicamp because I think this is kind of like the first major data point to say, like, these are the roles we see for these guys moving into training camp, and obviously training camp in the preseason.
Take Command podcast. All right, let's talk about the big story, presumably of today, Logan. As that's Logan Paulson. I'm Craig Hoffman. It is 9:09 a.m. on Tuesday morning. As we finish this podcast, Logan and I will head to Ashburn, or Logan's already in Ashburn because he lives in Ashburn, but you'll head to the facility. I will make my way out of the District of Columbia, out to suburban Virginia and to the facility, and we'll watch practice, and we don't expect to see Terry McLaurin. We know Laramie Tunsil showed up yesterday. He was, they as soon as he's there, hey, let's get him a uniform as part of media day, and let's get some material out there. And again, it's worth pointing out that this is, NFL players are paid in game checks in the fall. And so, part of it is like, yeah, I'm going to show up when they actually send me a check, as opposed to in the spring. Then some guys have workout bonuses, and we don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole, but like I have also thought that the NFL would be a better place if they went to a 52 week a year calendar, and you get paid every other week. The checks become smaller, but you get them more often. But that's a much different conversation for maybe the middle of July or something with someone from the NFLPA or an accountant. So that's part of it, right? Is just kind of the responsibility to your team, to yourself, and the fact that you are paid handsomely to play this sport, and making sure that you are ready, available, and able to contribute positively to the cause should be top of mind, because that's what having a job is. I also think that, like, I have a hard time separating the voluntary from like who gets voluntary for who, right? Like, ultimately it is voluntary. Like, we haven't talked at all about Eddie Goldman. Eddie Goldman didn't show up to any of the voluntary stuff, as far as I know. Now, he might be working through something, or might have been behind the scenes on some of that.
It's funny because some of those guys are like Kinlaw, for example, doesn't do every practice, but he's in the build. You know what I mean? Like, there are, like, there's just different.
Yeah.
lines,
And it's like, for a guy like Tunsil, I mean, even some people are like, oh, Tunsil should, like, he's new, he should be around. And like, sure, fine. But like Tunsil, it's like, oh no, he's earned it because he's maybe the best left tackle in the league. How good or bad do you have to be for us to care about the voluntary thing, when it's actually, like, at the root a labor issue that the NFLPA has negotiated?
Yeah, and I think players struggle with it too. Like, there were times when I was playing, I was like, this guy's missing OTAs? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, why would you do that? And like, there are times where guys think that they're above the pay grade. They're above that threshold, whatever that is. And I had a coach tell me one time that, like, players always think of themselves in elevated ways. Like, I told this story on the Command Center podcast yesterday, but I remember, and Tanner remembered it too, we had a conditioning test in 2013 before training camp, and obviously a little different time parameter here. And it was very hard. It was like a 45-second plank to a half gasser. The rest was the plank, and we had 8 of them, right? And there was no rest. So, like, you were just constantly going. So your back's cramping up, your hamstrings are really tight, hip flexors are on fire. It feels like you can't, like, you're running in quicksand. And right before the conditioning test, Ray Wright got up in front of the team, and he was like, hey guys, just so you know, like, this is a conditioning test, evaluation starts tomorrow with practice. We just want to see where everyone's conditioning's at. And at the time, and Tana and I said the same thing. It's like, this is a trap, man. Like, don't fall for that. Like, make sure that you finish the conditioning test. And there was a couple guys who thought they were somewhere else on the roster, who after 4 or 5 were like, man, I'm good. And I will be damned if the first thing coming out was the scouts, and they were like, you come with me, you come with me, you come with me, all cut on the spot. So, like, there are players who think of themselves in an elevated way. The staff thinks of them differently. And so I think that's one of the things with Marshawn that's interesting. It's like, Adam and Dan and Joe Witt Jr. have said that, they're really excited about him. They want him here. They, that they want him to be a part of the defense moving forward, not necessarily a part of OTAs, but they seem to have the right excitement for a guy that can miss OTAs. But like you were saying, the play over the last couple of years, the injury history over that last couple of years hasn't been of that caliber of guy. That's always a tough thing to transition to, for a player and for a staff, for a league to kind of view a player in a certain way. So I totally get that. we'll see what happens. He's made the decision. This is his decision, and ultimately he's got to live by it. Like, there are times where I look back at my career, I'm like, man, I wish I would have done something differently in retrospect.
Which actually brings us nicely to Terry McLaurin, who is in search of a new contract, and he and his agent are working with the team. I know Kime said on the Junkies the other day, it's like, people talk about, is the team not doing this? And it's like, well, the agent's got to play ball too.
Right.
And Terry's agent at times might have been, it may be a little difficult to deal with, which, I think there are worse attributes to have if I'm a player and that's my agent. Oh, he's a little difficult because he doesn't give in easily. Now there's levels to that. You obviously hear, general managers and agents talk about, we want to have good relationships with each other. So there's levels to like what it means to be difficult. Are you just difficult, or do you get your clients what you want, or what they want and what you want? And that we don't know, because we don't know the inside of the negotiations. We also don't know what numbers they're talking about, and that's the part that makes, I think, discussing this really hard, and why I don't think we're going to get too deep into this, because like I have an idea of what I think.
Well, you can get deep into that. Like, basically, but this is it. If he's asking to be the top paid receiver in the NFL, like,
that's
they're going to be far apart. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like not a good point to be in. If you're asking to make more money than DK Metcalf, that's more reasonable. I do think there are probably some people in front offices that think that DK Metcalf contract is an outlier contract, and so that's a bad bar, but it's much more reasonable. So basically, I think there's three tiers. One, if he's asking for the most money in the league, probably not a thing. If you're asking for most money or more money than DK Metcalf, I think you're probably going to get 50% of the GM saying yes, 50% of the GM saying no. And then there's probably a range, would you say 8th, 9th highest paid guy based on AAV, right?
Yeah.
That seems more reasonable. And I think if you're the team, you probably like the third one. If you're Terry, you probably want the second one in the first one. But I think that's where I'd probably fall, is like, in terms of things they could hypothetically be asking for.
So here, like, the funky thing is AAV is the number that we all talk about, but it's one of the silliest. Like, total value is even worse, but AAV, I mean, those two
total
are tied.
value. If you're a fan of the NFL and you see that number come across the ticker, that is maybe the worst representation of what the actual contract dollars and cents amount is. Just, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are smart, but like, don't look at that number. It's money guaranteed money per year is what you should be looking at.
Right. And then you want to see the structure of when that money is and the cap hits. And this is, so just to kind of flush that out, right? Average annual value, AAV, right? Average per year, based off of how many years is it divided by the total value. So this is a fake number. Here are the guys that make $30 million a year: Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill. And then the next guy who's making 28.7, and this number is relevant because he is a fresh contract this offseason, is T. Higgins. Okay? So if you think Terry, as a number one, should make more than T. Higgins as a number two, you're looking at least 29 per year. And Tyreek is the bar at 30. And he's the only one that's over 30. Obviously, that contract is a little bit older as well. Here's where I think that Terry can be a top 5 paid guy in the league. Let's go to either fully or total guarantees. Well, actually, no, the total is going to be harder. The fully guaranteed money, right? Jefferson's making 88, Chase is making 73, Lamb's making 67, and then DK is at 60. If you can what's
AJ Brown making?
AJ's at 51. His total guarantees are pretty high up there. So the total guarantees are 110 for JJ, Chase at 109, Lamb at 100, and then AJ at 84. DJ Moore's got 82 in total guarantees.
That's a crazy contract for him. Anyway,
he got
some of these contracts just are crazy. Like, they're bad contracts for teams.
But like his AAV is 27.5. So his was like a longer deal, right? So I think his was 5 for 110. So at the end of the day, if you go shorter, because Terry's 30, this is his age 30 season, and you do something like, let's go 3 for 90, or even 3 for, I mean, if he's going to try to get that 33 number that DK has got to be 3 for 100, right? But most of that, AAV number is just slammed into the third year that Terry's not going to see, that the team would be like, hey man, just so you know, we're going to cut you after 2 years if we don't renegotiate and bring that number down. Then you get to like 62 guaranteed, and that gets you above DK on the fully guaranteed at signing. you do like a $31 million bonus and $30 million, maybe it's an extra $5 million this year and 26 next year or whatever, something like that. And the cap numbers are not too crazy in 2 years where you have plenty of cap space. Like, that feels about right. And everyone can say, like, Adam can be like, hey, we signed Terry, and it's not, doesn't hamper us in the long term. Terry's agent can be like, I got him $30 million a year, and Terry can be like, I got a lot of money right now. That feels about right for me, but it's, we'll see. But I think, back to the core question we were asking too, Logan, this not getting done by minicamp doesn't make me change how I feel about Terry or this contract negotiation at all. It's annoying in many, many ways, sure, because, Terry's about all the right things. He's just coming off a career year, whatever. You'd think this shouldn't be that complicated. But at the end of the day, Terry's going to get a new deal. He'll be a Commander this year, and I don't think he's going to have to hold out in training camp to get it. I think they'll get it done this summer.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, like, the reason we brought up the numbers and the values and all these different names is just because, like, you don't know what they're asking for. So, like, if they're asking for something that's very reasonable, I think the deal gets done very quickly. But it just, contract negotiations, I've been a part of 2 big ones. Like, you start pretty far apart and you slowly whittle it down until you get to something that you both agree upon. And usually both parties hopefully are relatively happy with it. So I think that's, again, like when you said who's more frustrating, who's more surprising, like, I feel like I understand Terry's situation. And as a former player, like, do what you got to do, right? Figure it out, hold out, whatever this looks like, do what's right for you. You, like you said, you've been a pillar of the community. You've been an awesome player on the field. You've been great in the media. You've been a great representation of the franchise. If I'm on this roster, like, he's quote unquote earned this right, and hopefully they get it done sooner rather than later. And that's all. That's really, like, all I can say about it, because I don't have any inside baseball on it other than that.
Yeah, same. We'll see. I don't think we'll see Terry this week, but who knows? Stranger things have happened, certainly in the NFL, a league where many strange things happen. Wrapping up here on a Mailbag Monday on Take Command. If you want to get your questions in, you can. Just use the contact link at hoffmanshow.com. You can also hit us on Instagram at Hoffman.sports and at Logan_Paulson82. And Logan, same kind of format here as the first question we got about the tight ends. We're going to combine a couple of questions that we got. So if I'm not shouting you out individually, I apologize. However, many of you have asked about the running back situation and whether that is about Jacory Croskey-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill, or Brian Robinson, who we talked about extensively on last week's episode. I thought that this was worth bringing back up again because of some comments that Anthony Lynn made at his media availability last Thursday, where he said he sees Bill as like an A-level running back, is a guy that could challenge Brian Robinson for carries. Like, he's really good and ready to go pretty immediately. I feel like that's hard to know right now because they haven't even put pads on yet, haven't done a whole lot of team run, anything like that. But clearly based off what they think of him as a prospect and his development and all that kind of stuff, like, what does it mean for that running back room if truly we get into training camp and it's like, oh, crap, Croskey-Merritt's that good? Like, what does that mean for this running back room where all the incumbents are on the final year of their contract? And, that's kind of been a talking point throughout this offseason as well.
Yeah, no, I think pressers are always so funny because coaches are masters of not saying anything, right? They kind of always keep everything close to the vest, but every once in a while they give you a little bit of insight into how they view the position that they're coaching, which I think is really fantastic. And so with regards to the running back room, I believe the quote was something along the lines of, like, he kind of sees running backs as A and B running backs. And B running backs are, like, traditionally what I would associate as being like scat backs. So he's like, Austin Eckler is like one of the best B running backs in the NFL, right? And
gotcha.
And so, like, in my opinion, like, I think that's great. That's a really interesting way to kind of dissect the position. A is a guy that can do everything. And so leading into this process, one of my big questions about Bill was basically, like, what is he? How do they view him? Is he a scat back? Is he competing with Austin, or is he competing with Brian Robinson? Like, where does he fall? It's kind of like the tight end thing. And so it's funny that we're talking about them both on the same show, is like, are you competing with John Bates, who's a blocking Y, or are you competing with Zach Ertz? And in the running back room, it kind of falls in the same category. Do they view you as a guy who can do everything, or are you a guy that can just do the one pass game, scat back, third down type thing, which is very, very valuable, but a little bit different. So the fact that Anthony Lynn comes out and says, oh yeah, I think Bill is a guy that can be an A running back, kind of changes the parameters. So now instead of him competing with Eckler, Casimir Allen, Wiley, he's in the group with, B-Rob and Chris Rodriguez. And when you look at like that conversation we had about B-Rob and Chris Rodriguez, like I think that's really interesting because if you're looking at skill sets, who does Bill more closely represent? It's actually B-Rob in terms of kind of that athletic upside we're talking about. Like C-Rod's the hammer, right? And then, there's a hammer element to B-Rob, but there's a little bit more explosion, a little bit more pass game upside. And when you look at the film of Bill from college, the thing that really sticks out to you is his ability to hit the home run and his ability to maximize bad runs and take them the distance. So now all of a sudden, I think that conversation about the running back room becomes a little bit more interesting. Couple that with the fact that at the media day yesterday, he came over and did an interview with Brian Colbert, and one of the things that stuck out to me immediately was how big he was. Like, he doesn't look like a scat back. We saw him in the practice field. He's down on the grass. You can't really get a sense of how big he is, but he's wider than you think. His lower half, his legs are thicker than you think. So all of a sudden that conversation or that comment by Lynn, who in the interview said he's bigger than I thought he was, makes a lot more sense. And I think it really kind of opens the door because I don't think there was going to be a lot of movement from Austin Eckler in terms of his role. I think he was established as that kind of quote unquote be back for this team, and he deserves it because he played so well last year. I do think based on, again, kind of B-Rob's ascension and then kind of doldrums throughout the year, there is some space for someone to take over. And I think we kind of assume maybe C-Rod would be in that role. But now after these comments, I think that conversation is now a 3-horse race as opposed to 2.
Well, and then I think the question is like, what's Jeremy McNichols? Is he a C? Is he a guy that,
Well, he kind of do both maybe. Yeah.
Right. And so like, I don't know whether Anthony Lynn has a C category of like guys that can do both. But like when you think about the roster buildup, part of the beauty of McNichols is that if, God forbid, B-Rob went down during a game, or if Eckler went down during a game, McNichols could do a decent impersonation of either of them. Right. Not to mention he had kind of his own skill set. He's great as a blocker, pass pro. Like he's kind of that third down guy in a different way than Eckler is, right? So where does Bill like go in that bucket? But also, are you trying to keep an A and a B and a C? Or are you trying to keep 2 A's and 1 B? Or are you trying to keep 4? Like gets into some of the special teams conversation. Can he play teams? Like these are the questions that you're trying to suss out in training camp. And knowing that he's an A guy, I think is interesting. Like, is there a chance that he just if he flat out beats Brian Robinson for the job, like what happens to B-Rob? Like these are, is there a team that needs back and do they trade B-Rob? Like, I'm not trying to start anything. It's just like, these are the questions that will arise if that happens. He's also a 7th round pick. So there's a really good chance that he doesn't do that. Brian Robinson, as we establish, is a good, even if he's just slightly above average, but a good NFL running back. And the chance is that a, rookie is going to come in 7th rounder and just take his job doesn't feel likely. And I think that's the other thing too about Bill that's so interesting is, if he doesn't miss all of last year through not injury, not anything other than silly NCAA eligibility nonsense, is he a 7th round pick? Like, did they get a 5th, 4th, 3rd round talent in the 7th round? And does he become this, crazy, oh my God, I can't believe he fell to the 7th round story simply because he missed his final year? And the last piece of that too, Logan, is he's, I think, 24 years old, he will be 24 this year if he's not already. And so, when you say he's a little bit bigger, it's like, oh, that makes sense because he's an older guy who's had the chance to pack on some weight. His body is more mature compared to a 21-year-old coming out who still has a chance to add 10, 15 pounds once he gets to the NFL.
Yeah, and I do think that's interesting. And again, I'm glad you brought that thing up about his draft position because I think a lot of people see the 7th round draft pick and they say, oh, that's ridiculous. He's basically a UDFA. And I empathize and understand that completely. However, I will say when I watched his film at Arizona of the Shrine Bowl, of the 23 film that I watched of him, like he didn't feel that way. When you watch him, he's explosive. He's got great contact balance. He's like and I said this in the draft evaluation, he's like a runner's runner, like in a way that gets you really excited. And so to me, again, who knows how he would have played last year if he had figured out the NCAA eligibility thing. But I think they got a guy who is probably a 4th round talent, but fell to the 7th round because of this NCAA eligibility issue, which really wasn't there was no fault of his. So
Right.
I do think there's a more talented prospect here than his draft grade would indicate. And it's something that again, especially after those comments, and I'm not trying to stir anything up, but it does show that the staff views him in a way that now it gives him a bucket, and now that he has a bucket, we can have this conversation about where we see his role going. And I think you bring up a great point. It is OTAs. They haven't had a mini camp yet, but when you watch him move around like in bags and take as much or as little as you want from bag drills, he is a special explosive mover, and I think that's something that again, it gets you. This is the what if season, right? In the same way I get excited about what Kane Medrano could be, I get excited about what Jordan McGee could be. When I see a mover like that with Bill, I'm like, oh shoot, like this could be something that they haven't had at the running back position for a couple years. Like I love B-Rob. I think B-Rob's a special, fun player to watch, but having a guy that has that home run ability and the consistent down-to-down running is very unique, and is something that I'm excited to see once they get the pads on and once they start tackling. Because again, as we talked about, it's really hard to evaluate the running back position, not in team drills.
Right. It's just, you watch and you're like, oh, I saw nothing. You just like, there's no the pad or no pads, even in team run, like without pads. It's very, very different. Backs are pretty much scoring a touchdown every play because they just run through arm tackles that they wouldn't run through in actual situations. So sometimes you can tell like, oh, no, he's definitely down there. But often these guys just keep running because that's what they're coached to do. And, that is what it is. And, in the pass game, they're not doing a whole lot. So it's just, we're not going to know until the fall. But training camp at this point is like 6 weeks away. And that's terrifying.
It is terrifying.
Actually, no, I think it's a little more than that. It's like 7 or 8 weeks away. It's still terrifying.
It's coming up quick, man.
Yeah. Look, it's June 10th, man. It's June 10th. 2 months from now, August 10th, we'll be like, we're coming out here again. It'll be those days. We'll be in the dog days of training camp. But it's coming. It's coming quick. All right. That's our show for today. We'll be back with a review of everything that we see on Thursday. So make sure you're subscribed to Take Command so you never miss an episode. And again, I'll be live in Ashburn this afternoon reviewing everything on the radio as well from 4 to 7 on the Hoffman Show. For Logan, I'm Craig. We'll see you next time. Make sure you get your questions in. Again, HoffmanShow.com. You can use the contact link or on Instagram at Hoffman.sports and Logan_Paulson82. And we'll see you next time on Take.